parent's worst nightmare is the loss of a son or daughter.
Getting a phone call from the sheriff's department saying that they found your daughter dead in her apartment, which is what happened to me.
5 girls in a car. One daughter came to our hospital brain dead. One went to Western Medical Center, Santa Ana. Mom had to try and figure out which child to be with. Mom had to let go that one child wasn't going to get better, while another child that was in the car with them was in the room next door, paralyzed.
To get a phone call that your son has died, identifying his body, watching him being brought out in a body bag, picking out his coffin, picking out a gravesite.
I think the worst thing that can happen to a parent is to lose a child. And when you actually get the call and the moment that you hear the words spoken, in my case it was a telephone call from a county agency. In my wife's case it was me telling her verbally. But no matter what, the reaction is the same. You are just profoundly saddened and sort of thrown into kind of a lifetime of sorrow and sadness, and it's almost like somebody locking the jail cell and turning the lock and there's no coming back.
The worst part was going over to Tucson and then going in and claiming her, seeing her for the first time. That was very difficult. Fortunately, I was over there with my wife, and also a good friend of mine flew in from out of town. And at that point in time, on the way back on the airplane, he suggested that I might want to start a foundation in her name and try to have some sort of positive spin on her life. I started looking for organizations that I could support financially, and that's when I went to Jade for the first time.
I always knew I wanted to work with people. I always knew I wanted to be a social worker, so that was always a dream and desire. And you know, after I made some changes in my life and went into this field, I started working with law enforcement. It continued on to the sheriff's department, and I got pregnant with triplets and thought I was going to be a stay-at-home mom and not do this. And I, you know, was strongly encouraged by some professionals, deputies out in the field to, can you please do the drug and alcohol program like you did before? And so that's what we did.
Margie and Mike Darnold came and met with a board member and myself, and we were looking for something that needed to be proactive because our kids were not learning the lessons that we needed them to learn. Recidivism was pretty high. So we started a program called Second Chance, and it was a 3-day program to bring in speakers and discussion topics for the kids. And Jade was already in place. Jade was an evening program with the kids and the parents. And so we put together a program that if you were caught at a dance or a school function or at school under the influence, then you'd have to go through those programs and hopefully learn some lessons and maybe not do it again.
I started speaking for at drug rehabs and then also at DARE programs at school. And then one night, Gil and I were at a fundraiser for David Hungerford's daughter, Shannon, who unfortunately she died of a drug overdose a year after Kevin. And that's where I met Margie, who is our director. And Margie said that she had a program which was called JADE, Juvenile Alcohol Drug Education. And she asked me if I would be interested in speaking. So then I started speaking, and then I told Gil about it, and then Gil started speaking. And then it's just taken off, and then Margie left where she was working, and we collaborated, and that's how California Youth Service started. We were sitting in my kitchen, Gil and I and Margie, on how we were going to develop this.
I oversee the operations, the finances, work with the board members, work with the staff, And part of it over the years has been to help grow this organization and continue our impact. So do a lot of fundraising, and that's important. About 80% of our revenues come from fees and payments from school districts and parents, and 20% comes from fundraising. So it's been a big role for me, even though when I was working full-time, I was still very active, all times of evening and night being involved, and then when I stopped working, I became even more involved. And it's been very fulfilling for me. And bottom line is we know we're having an impact helping kids and their parents.
Most of the parents when they first come in it seem to be angry, almost like, hey, I'm not the one who got in trouble, why do I have to be here? You know, my kid screwed up, this isn't on me. But over the course of, for instance, the JADE programs, I think they get an education and they seem to be a lot more flexible in taking a look at their, you know, what they may not have done that has contributed possibly to their kids making decisions that weren't in their best interest. I don't think that there's any judgment on them in any way, shape, or form and saying, hey, you are a bad parent, because I certainly don't believe that. I think that as parents, our job is to provide opportunities for our kids to succeed in some way. But you can lead a horse to water, you can't make them drink. And so our job as a parent is to provide those opportunities.
A lot of parents are in denial, or like I was, and that they need to be educated to look for signs, the proper signs of addiction. And so, I could tell that there was a passion that Margie and her group had for wanting to help young children. And I thought the age bracket as well was good as well. And the reason being, from age 12 to 17, that's when they can start down the path. And you keep them on the right path during those years, they have a lot better chance, I think, in the future.
The most important thing CYS does, I feel, is equipping parents for parenting and giving them tools and resources. Not just simple things like just say no or that's bad, but they actually give them resources on where to go from help. They hear from reality-based speakers of people who've actually been there, done that, and to give them the strength and encouragement. Many of our speakers are involved because they personally have been touched by addiction or by depression or anxiety issues or bullying, and so many families reach out to us for resources and help.
It's a very broad mission, but it focuses on teens, young adults, individuals, families, to work with issues related to substance abuse, decision making, mental health, and the challenges that people face in their lives. So when you focus on it, there's a heavy emphasis on prevention education on substance abuse, and then working with families and parents to balance that issue of how do you parent in a positive way your kids to be successful and healthy.
A lot of the times, some people think that Gil and I just speak at high schools and we just have our JADE program, and they don't realize that we have the counseling service. And to keep something like this going, you need the funds. And the fundraiser also shows the people that are attending the fundraiser what we do and see that it's just not one portion. We help parents with resources. We help teens with resources.
What's more important than your kids? As I say to some of the kids sitting in our classes, you don't think about it, but in our lives, everyone that lives with kids, that is the most important part of their life, is helping their kids to grow up and be healthy.
I think that it's investing back into their own community in particular. The youth of today is going to be our leaders for tomorrow, and so we really need their help.
Yeah, losing Christopher was the worst thing that ever happened to me. Worst thing that ever happened to his mother. And it puts you in a life sentence of sadness, and it's something that no parent should ever have to go through. And if there's anything that I can do, as long as there's a breath in me to prevent another family from going through this, I will do whatever I can. And I would really encourage people to support the work that Gil and Flo are doing here at CYS.
One of the friend of mine said, you know, Flo, I think it's great what you and Gil do, but do you really think you're making a difference? And I was telling somebody that story, and they had sent me a story, and I use this every time I speak to the young teens, and I give them a starfish at the end, and these are little real starfishes that I had ordered. And what it is about a man who walks along a beach, and as he's walking along the beach, he sees this young man bending down, picking something up, and he says, I've been watching you for 20 minutes. Can I ask what you're doing? And he says, yeah, it was a big storm last night. Washed up the starfish, it's low tide, the sun's out, they're gonna die. He goes, man goes, do you know how many miles and miles of beach and thousands of starfish? You can't possibly make a difference. And with that, the young man threw his starfish in the ocean, and he goes, but I made a difference for that one. So if I make a difference for one of you kids today, then you're my starfish. And that's my mission.